We go again here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. Soren Petro, Rany Jazayerli with you, talking Royals baseball. We take a deep dive into the Royals system, or at least what Rany's top 12, the dirty dozen, we may end up dubbing this, his top 12 prospects for the Kansas City Royals. My top 12 prospects for the Kansas City Royals. How good are they? Are they good enough? Is the system in good enough shape? We'll discuss it, break it down from every angle. We also talk about the departure of Jin Wong, one of the longest tenured employees in the Royals front office. It's more change. The front office, I don't think it's the change that necessarily either one of us thought it would be. And if there's time, we'll get into the Arizona Diamondbacks. Is there anything to take away from their run as a small payroll team deep into these playoffs? We do it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany and the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And good evening and welcome, if it is evening where you are, when you do listen to the Kaufman Corner podcast. We welcome you. We are live, remember, usually on a Sunday at 10 o'clock. We're on a Monday because of travel for both of us yesterday. So we thank everybody for joining us in the chat room. Remember, whether it's on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, you can be a part of the conversation when we do the podcast live. We always enjoy the comments from everybody about the podcast. So remember, usually Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Again, we're doing it here on a Monday night at 10 p.m. That's when you can be a part of the conversation. But we thank you for joining us whenever you can. And Rany, welcome back. You had a lovely trip overseas. You're back stateside.
I did.
Looking no worse for the wear, I might add.
Well, I was going to say, when you're like, maybe evening wherever you are. Well, physically it's 10 p.m. for me, but my body thinks it's 6 o'clock in the morning because that's what time it is in Greece right now. I had a lovely week in Athens and Santorini. And celebrating my 25th anniversary with my wife. Had a wonderful time. I'm exhausted. So if I on my top prospects list, if Zach Greinke and Brett Saberhagen suddenly show up, you'll understand why. So
what? Your 25th anniversary? No way, Rany. You're old enough to be married for 25 years? Come on now. I just thought I'd be the guy.
Thank you, Soren. I did get married young, so people are quite surprised when they hear that we've been together 25 years, or that any woman would put up with me for that long.
There you go. Now I think we know what
the truth finally comes out. When I'm tired and loopy, I start speaking the truth.
Yeah, that's a little bit more of what we expected. All right, let's start with this. We came up with the idea that we'd go with our top dozen prospects. Anything you learned before we start diving into our list, that jumped out at you that like, oh, wow, that was kind of surprising?
Well, I'd like to tell you that after doing my deep dive on the Royals prospects, that I discovered that the farm system wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was. But alas, that's not true. It's exactly as bad as I thought it was, maybe even worse. And I mean, I remember when we did this exercise last year, right at the end of the season, we both ranked our top 12 prospects. And I mean, it was a weak system then, but frankly, it feels like the talent this season is even lower than it was last year. And, a lot of the world's best young players are already in the major leagues. That you can make an excuse for some of that, but it is a bad farm system. And that is why, even above and beyond what you would expect for a team that lost 106 losses, how long this is going to take, we have to be realistic with the timetable here. Because there's not a lot. The cavalry ain't coming next year. Like, there's not a lot of help coming on the farm anytime soon. But there's always diamonds in the rough, and I'm hoping maybe we can discover them together.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. And the thing that jumped out at me is, one, just how barren it is. I looked at several different things and rankings and, things that I trust from fantasy baseball, rankings for prospects and different things. And, you get a feel. I'm no scout. I haven't seen almost any of these guys play, maybe a video here or there. I read numbers, right? I've been reading the numbers of minor leaguers for a long, long time. And, you start to notice some trends and some things that start to pop up and be regular things. And, the trends that you look for, they're not there. I mean, like what generally ends up being a really good prospect, you're not seeing the things that you want for that. I mean, I think it'll be generous if anybody makes their makes a top 100 list next year. I don't think anybody.
I don't think they will.
Maybe in the top 200 or so. There are some guys that show some interesting traits, but the age as well. Like, nobody's young. There's like one guy, and his numbers aren't great across the board, and we'll get to him later on. I think you know who I'm probably talking about, but it's disappointing. It was somewhat expected, but it's disappointing, and it's a long, long way away.
Let's put it this way. The farm system is so bad that I found myself being annoyed that Angel Serpa has 59 innings of major league experience.
Yes.
He had that 10 fewer innings, he would be on this list somewhere. Not that I think Angel Serpa is going to be a star or even above average pitcher, but just having established a baseline of major league quality would have been more than enough to get him on this list if he had qualified.
Yeah. I put no one who had even a day of big league service time on my list.
Okay. Well, then there's one specific player that will that you will probably not have on your list that I will have high, but this is a very informal process, so it'll be I think it's really just one main player, and then there's a couple of other guys with a little bit of experience.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
You were so excited to put Nick Lofton back on the list.
Well, I mean, he was on the list last year, I think, but yes, he's high on my list. And again, that's not necessarily glowing praise of Nick Lofton so much as just relative to everybody else in this system.
Yeah,
I have more faith in Nick Lofton having a major league future than all but very few players in this farm system that I would have more confidence will have a major league career than him.
All right, are we going 12 to 1 or 1 to 12?
Let's start 1 to 12. Let's alternate. And if my number one player is your number 3, then you will cross them off your list. You can discuss them, and then you'll get your chance. So
okay,
why don't you lead us off here?
Number 1, Mason Barnett.
Okay, that's your number 1 prospect in the Royals farm system.
Number 1 prospect in the system. I mean, I think there are a number of different ways. To look at it, and I think the combination of numbers, right, for
Mm-hmm.
Mason Barnett, age, I think is the one that I feel like he's gonna get there. He's gonna be there. Last year, a couple of stops, high A and double A. What I want from a prospect is I want a guy to get strikeouts. He had 94 strikeouts in 82 innings at high A. He kept the strikeouts up, 43 Ks and 32 2/3. The whip is down, not walking too many guys. He doesn't fit the profile of your prototype guy at only 6 feet tall. He's not the big 6'5" right-hander that the Royals would normally want, but he's got swing and miss stuff. And if he doesn't make it as a starter, he's definitely going to make it as a high impact reliever. So there's a little bit of, this guy I know is going to be a big league pitcher, I think, based upon the numbers and some sort. So there's some security there. So I went with Mason Barnett.
I can't say you're wrong, only because, again, the farm system is so weak that, and anybody who's a prospect, you could make a case for being at the very top of the list.
But it's so bad you could make a case for them not being on the list.
Well, exactly. I mean, so
none of them are that good.
Well, I have Mason Barnett number 10. I mean, he's on my list, but only barely. And that's, the case for him So, I mean, you could definitely make the case. I mean, he was the Royals minor league pitcher of the year. But the case for him statistically is quite strong. Like you said, he had statistically the best year of any starting pitcher in the farm system. And he was there were other guys who were dominant for like at one minor league stop, but then got promoted and struggled. And he did not. He actually got better. His strikeout and walk ratios were actually better after going from A ball to Double A. It was a small sample size, but that definitely catches your eye. He's definitely a prospect, and in this farm system, anybody who is a prospect can get labeled a top prospect. I think the case against him putting him at the top of the list is, while statistically his numbers are excellent, I feel like the scouting reports that I have seen indicate he's a good prospect, but I think we're talking about a guy who might top out as a number 4 starter. And I
show me the guy who looks like an ace in the system.
Yeah,
I'm all ears.
Exactly. Well, that's that's one of the reasons why there aren't a lot of starting pitchers in the farm system period. I mean, I'll always go with a hitter if I have a choice between the two. But he's a prospect. He's definitely a prospect. And I think it's just a sign of how weak not just how weak, but how jumbled this farm system is. There's lots of guys who have one or two standout tools, or guys who have good performances but are old for their level, or guys who are really young for the level but didn't have good performances. Like, everybody has warts. Everybody has an upside scenario, but there's just very few sure things in this farm system. If Mason Barnett really is the top prospect in the system, I think that's a really bad sign, because he's.
Well, I think it's a really bad system.
Yeah. I agree. That's the one thing we're definitely completely lockstep on that. So
right.
my number 1 prospect, I mean, when in doubt, when you have a system this bad, it's a cliche to go chalk, but I have to go chalk when it's this bad and just say Blake Mitchell is the number 1 prospect in the system. Because if he's not, then that is an extremely bad sign, not just for the organization, the talent, but for the front office. If the guy they just drafted with the 8th overall pick in one of the deepest drafts we've seen in 15 years is not the top prospect in a terrible farm system, then you've already screwed that up really badly.
So you who railed against taking a high school catcher who then hit below $2 in batting average and with no power whatsoever, put this guy at the top.
Yeah, because the farm system is that bad. If this farm system was even mediocre, there's no way he'd be number 1. And I mean, it was 11 years. I'm not looking at his before. The reason I'm upset with the draft pick was before he played a game in the minor leagues. His performance is almost meaningless. 13 games. But yes, he didn't hit. He did walk. We've talked about that. He had a 423 OBP. The defense, the fact that he plays a premium position, the upside here, like, nobody here has certainty. So I'm going to go with the upside play. The upside here, even his critics will say, yeah, the upside is an all-star catcher. The reason you don't take him in the top 10 is because the risk is so high. The floor is so low. So I'm gonna have to, in a farm system this week, I'm gonna go with the upside.
Okay.
So that means Blake Mitchell. But do I feel good about it? No, probably no better than you feel about having Mason Barnett number 1. So
all right. So who do you have at number 2?
Where did you have Blake Mitchell? Was he on your list?
Yeah, Blake Mitchell's on my list. I have Blake Mitchell at number 4.
Number 4. Okay. I mean, so that's.
For a second there, I thought I forgot him. I'm like, oh, I know him. I'm like, oh, no, there he is.
It's impossible to forget anybody in this system. You can make a case for anybody to be left off the list. So number 2 this is where I actually have Nick Lofton. I mean, this is when I realized how bad this farm system is. That Nick Lofton, in part, I mean, I don't want to put too much weight on what he did in 19 games in the major leagues. I mean, he had 323, which is very impressive. More relevantly, he had 12 strikeouts and 68 plate appearances, a 17% strikeout rate, which goes along with his low strikeout rate in the minor leagues. That's more impressive to me than the 323 average. But the big thing is, in AAA this year, he had 14 homers in 47 strikeouts, and basically half a season. that combination of power and contact is, from a guy who at AAA, a guy who's major league ready now, that to me bodes well for his ability to be an everyday major leaguer. I mean, there's a 25% chance that he could be Whit Merrifield with less speed, certainly, but probably more defensive ability. Like he could play shortstop and third base, whereas Merrifield was mainly a second baseman and an outfielder. That is, a high, that's a best case scenario for sure. But Nick Lofton is ready for the major leagues and at least a utility role. And again, if they trade Michael Massey this offseason, which I think is a possibility, he could very well be starting every day next year for this team. There's really nobody in the farm system other than him that I feel strongly will be an everyday player in the major leagues in the future. So by default, Nick Lofton is number 2 for me.
Yeah, he'll be 26 during the season, late in the season, but 26 next year. Not a prospect in my mind. Long overdue. And I didn't put him on there because I don't think there's much of a prospect. 25% I think is generous that he ends up being Whit Merrifield. I mean, we've been waiting a long time. This is a college guy. It shouldn't take this long for him to get to the big leagues. And I don't think that there's the likelihood of him blossoming into an all-around player. I don't see it. I think he's a utility guy at best. And again, if I were taking guys that were, in the big leagues, maybe I would have found a spot for him, but I only took guys that weren't in the that had no big league experience whatsoever. So my number 2 is Blake Walters.
Okay.
Blake Walters was their second pick this past year, right? I got that right. Second pick, they gave him a good chunk of change, $2.8 million. Has not pitched. It's one of the reasons why he's number 2. Right? Like he basically didn't pitch. I don't know. He might be pitching in the Arizona League or something like that.
But I thought you hated it when the Royals take guys and then they don't, and totally. But you're giving him credit for that. I guess I'm curious.
I'm not giving him credit. He just hasn't screwed up yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I literally don't know what he is. I know something on just about everybody else. The fact that he has a high pedigree, was a high pick, up to 99, is the athlete type. There's upside. This is a total swing for the upside. This is kind of the opposite of what Mason Barnett is. Right. Barnett, I know, is going to probably be a reliever or a 4th, 5th guy, but I do like his swing and miss stuff. But this is a total upside guess. And no, I don't like how they do that. I think you should get him out there and get him pitching in competitive environments. I don't know what you learn, with no real count or score or stats or anyone actually tracking what's going on. And I don't care that they keep track of the stats. There's no public accord. So no, I hate it. But the pedigree of the guy is good, and I haven't seen him fail yet. Everybody else has a wart of some kind.
So the question I have is, what is it that has you putting him above Blake Mitchell? Yes, Blake Mitchell, high school pitcher, extremely risky, but high school pitcher also risky.
Failed.
But 13 games is enough for you to feel like there's a wart that would lower him below a guy who they didn't even let pitch in like complex league.
13 games. Have you ever seen anything like what Blake Mitchell posted?
I mean, there are players who have gone out and just walked, but never, not gotten a hit for 2 weeks. Sure.
No, I haven't. And the history of high school catchers is terrible. And so I said he needs to hit the ground running. He needs to hit from the get-go, and he didn't hit from the get-go. And so I think that's a really bad sign. I think if you're going to take him as high as you did, he needs to come out guns a-blazing, and that wasn't it. So, listen, like I said, I have him at number 4, but, like, the upside on him, I mean, John Buck, right? Like, run into something here and there, but hell, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Who was the guy they had that was just like a walk machine with a sub 200 batting average?
The Royals?
Yeah, they had a guy, Pedroia. He went on to the to go on to the Red Sox.
Was it a catcher?
Yeah, he's a backup catcher. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but anyway, no, I don't listen. I didn't like the pick when they made it. for a lot of
Oh,
reasons.
I
History says that it's not going to go well,
like
and
it.
he didn't do anything to say that they got it right. So no,
No.
I mean, I've got him four.
That's fine. Oh, George Coteras. Yes, there's
George Gutierrez.
yeah,
Thanks.
Gutierrez. Yes. A very unroyal-esque player.
Yes.
Where walks were his whole value. So
Love this. Logan says, I expect this to be depressing, and it is somehow worse.
we're really arguing over nothing.
Jury this is like watching a sad World War II movie where all the soldiers understand they won't survive the accident on the submarine.
Is this like the first 30 seconds of Saving Private Ryan where they're like on the boats about to hit the D-Day shores, knowing
Blake Mitchell is the guy that walked over and picked up his own severed arm. Yes, that's what's going on here. Yes.
I mean, look, you things are bad when I'm the one sitting defending Blake Mitchell, but the point isn't that I'm defending Blake Mitchell. It's just that as much as I hated the pick because the other options on the board with the 8th pick were so much better in my mind. Kyle Teal and Tommy Troy and Matt Shaw, and there's a bunch of guys. Whereas Blake Wolters in the second round, I wasn't a big fan of the pick then, but the alternatives were not as good. I still would rather have Blake Mitchell than Blake Wolters, I guess, between the two. But
have fun with it.
Yeah, we don't really know because one hasn't played and the other one's played for 2 weeks. But secondly, we're not defending either. We're picking which one we dislike more. That's kind of depressing. Let's move on. On.
Number 3.
Okay.
Number 3 is Frank Mazzucato.
Okay, we are in agreement on that number. Well, I have Frank third as well.
Okay, so Frank Mazzucato at number 3 for Rany. And listen, he's still striking guys out. He did really well until they moved him up. That does scare the hell out of me that he was just an absolute no-show. When they bumped him up, that's pretty frightening. But the swing and miss stuff, is there. He's young. There's a pedigree. He's left-handed. There's velocity. There's everything. There's all kinds of tools if anybody can teach him how to throw a strike.
Yeah, and I do wonder how much. Remember, he had that collision with his teammate. I think it was Brendan McNair in low A ball mid-season that was going to knock him out for like a month. I think he only ended up missing a couple weeks, and then he came back to low A ball, got promoted shortly thereafter. But even before his promotion, his performance went down as soon as he came back. Like he stopped. He was not nearly as dominant. And I don't know for sure that he was 100% the rest of the way. But my concerns with him, I mean, the reason why I don't have him, higher than Blake Mitchell, he's a pitcher for one thing. That's the biggest thing. But in addition to the lack of command, it's the velocity just hasn't come along enough yet. He throws 90-91 most of the time. And that's just not major league caliber in the year 2023. He is left-handed. He's just 20 years old. He turned 20 in June. There is time for him to get some velocity. But if anybody in this farm system needs to be on some sort of training program designed to build velocity, which we now know is possible, and there are places he can go to build velocity, Frank Mazzucato needs to be that guy. And, we've seen video from guys like Dylan Coleman and even Colin Snyder working at Tread about building up their stuff. I haven't seen any videos of Frank Mazzucato. I haven't heard any word of Frank Mazzucato out there picking up velocity. I haven't seen any videos of him hitting 95 on a radar gun. I really would like to see that. If I saw that, I'd probably feel a lot better about him right now. The upside is still there. Like you said, the swing and the miss stuff is terrific. What did he have? 85 strikeouts in 56 innings in low A ball this year.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
But to me, the reason I don't excuse away the poor numbers at high A to the collision is because they were sandbagging that. I mean, I almost wondered if they were trying to trade him because it was clear that they just let him pile up those strikeouts, which I like, and I think strikeouts are important. Generally, guys just dominate at the lower levels with the strikeout if they're going to be good. But to me, that just felt like I was like, okay, are the Royals like trying to showcase him? trying to build up the numbers and they're going to throw him into a deal. I kind of wondered that. And, then as soon as he went up, it was like, yeah, no, he doesn't have the goods right now. So we'll see. All right, for you, who's number 4 on your
So
list?
number 4 on my list is Caden Wallace.
Okay.
And this is, you talk about a guy, you talk about how everybody has warts in the system. This is the reason I have him at this high is he's one of the few guys in the system there doesn't really have any weaknesses. The problem is he doesn't really have any strengths either. Right? Like you remember this is a second round draft pick last year. So Gavin Cross was the first pick. Mason Barnett was the third pick. He was a second round pick. College third baseman, and was a draft eligible sophomore. So he was younger than most college juniors. And he played most of this season at 21. He turned 22 in August, but he's a little bit younger than some of these other college draft picks. He's basically the same age as a lot of the college guys that the Royals took this year. And he started in A-ball, was promoted to Double-A late in the year. His performance declined a little in Double-A, not a terrible amount. His strikeout and walk numbers were actually they were stable, so that's good. For the season, a 255 batting average, 331 on base, 414 slugging. Again, nothing spectacular there. Very, very average. But very average. Making it to Double-A in your first full pro season, and you turned 22 late in the year. The combination of youth and across the board performance, without suffering when you got promoted to Double-A, there is a potential everyday hitter here. Again, in most farm systems, he wouldn't be a top 10 guy, I don't think.
Okay.
The defense, from what I've seen, is good enough that he's likely to stay at third base. Like he can play. So a guy who plays an important defensive position, maybe the most important non-up the middle position, and might be able to hit for a decent power. Might be able to get on base at a decent clip. Again, decent is the best we can hope for here. But if he's an average player, that's a great prospect. A guy who turns into an average major league player is a very good prospect. So in a farm system this bad, I have him 4th.
All right. So you had him at 4. I've already said Blake Mitchell is my 4. So my 5 is Gavin Cross.
Well, where did you have Caden Wallace on your list?
Yeah. I have Caden Wallace at 11.
11. Okay. So that's, again, there's a lot of variation. Oh, I should point out, you mentioned Blake Walters was at number 2. I have him. He actually was my last cut. He was number 13, but I have 3 guys on my list who have major league experience. So if we assume that they were not eligible for yours, then Blake Walters would have been 10 on my list. So as you can see, we've got several guys where we're off by 5 spots or more, which just gives you an idea of just how unsettled this farm system is.
Well, and so I will say about Caden Wallace is, listen, they're moving him up based on he's a college draft pick, and they want to get him into the big leagues. And there is nothing about any level he's been at since rookie ball that said he should be promoted. And yet they're promoting him anyway. And I don't get it. To me, that's almost like, well, we got to shove him out of the way because we've got the next class of guys that are coming. But there's nothing that he has done that warrants promoting him. There's nothing remarkable about the guy. And generally speaking, you can, discount anything a guy does by 20 to 40% off what he's going to end up being as a big leaguer. And a discount of 20 to 40% off what he's doing says he's not a big leaguer.
And absolutely. Right now, he is not. No question.
I mean, listen, he plays a different position, obviously, but he smells Mitch Meyer-esque as a player. He'll get up there because they drafted him high, and they'll justify it because teams love talking about how many guys in their draft class got to the big leagues. But I don't think he's ever going to warrant going to the big leagues. He'll just get there at some point because they'll shove him up there. But I don't see a whole lot when it comes to his upside.
Well, I mean, you say that, but then you just said that Gavin Cross is number 5 on your list, and everything you just said about Caden Wallace, you could probably say about Gavin Cross at this point.
Except for Gavin Cross was a first-round draft pick. Gavin Cross did show much more power earlier in his career, and Keith Law liked Gavin Cross.
Fair enough.
So people I trust liked Gavin Cross. I mean, I think it's terrifying the way he's playing right now. I think it looks like a guy who they got in there and said, oh, okay, wait a minute. We got to change your swing a little bit. And, I have no idea whether or not this was done or not, but it doesn't look good. You shouldn't be hitting a ceiling already the way he is, but he's got power. He's an athlete, and he comes with a first round pedigree. So, for the same reason you have Blake Mitchell 1, I have Gavin Cross 5.
Okay. That's perfectly reasonable. I have him 9th, but if you take out the major leaguers, he's actually 6th on my list. So we actually have a lot more correlation with Gavin Cross. Look, the pedigree is still like I'll lean on a guy's pedigree after 1 bad season. 2 bad seasons, the pedigree, you throw it out the window more or less, right? Okay. So like I think he has to show something substantial in 2024.
Okay.
He played. They had him. I think he played like 4 games in the Arizona Fall League, which it's is a sign that they still believe in the talent, because a guy who had played, I think, 2 games above A ball, he got hurt after 2 games in Double A. Those guys are not generally the guys you send to the Arizona Fall League, but they wanted him to he finally got healthy. They wanted to at least get his feet wet in the Arizona Fall League. And like you said, the power is major league. We'll see if the hit tool develops to the point where he can actually access that power at the major league level. But there is talent there.
I love this. Park says, quote, "Nothing he's done justifies promoting him as perhaps the best verbal avatar for the last 30 years of Royals front office I can imagine." Where's Lonnie Goldberg again? We'll get to the front office movements here in a minute.
I mean, in the one defense I'll say there for Lonnie Goldberg is this predates the whole Dayton Moore era. I mean, you remember the Allard Baird era and promoting guys to the major leagues. I mean, I'm not just talking Eduardo Villas's. I mean, there were a lot of guys that two good weeks in Double A and they were in the majors, and that's just no way to run a farm system. So,
all right. So number 5 for you is?
So number 5 for me is Ben Kuderna. And we've had this. I feel like we have had the exact same.
I don't know what says Ben Kuderna should be number 5, but
sorry,
I don't know what about Ben.
I mean,
production says he should be number 5.
Well, I mean, he had it showed modest improvement, particularly in his strikeout rate in A ball, and the same arguments we were having between Kuderna and Mazzucato a year ago, I feel like are still there. Whereas Mazzucato has better swing and miss stuff, better upside, a little younger. Kuderna's a little more polished, better command. And, he's older than Mazzucato, but still he was a high school draft pick. So he's still just 20 years old himself. Like, the argument here is he's 20 years old. He has a major league fastball. The scouting report on him, he was a second round pick in the draft, but he got over $3 million. He got almost as much money as Mazzucato did. So I think there's major league stuff here, and he's developing very slowly, but he has enough youth on his side that there is still a chance that he becomes a mid-rotation starter in the future.
Why do you think he has major league stuff?
I mean, basically
he's not even 9 Ks per 9 for his minor league career.
Oh, I know. When I talk about, I'm just purely talking about the scouting report, the velocity of his fastball, and I've seen video of his slider and especially his changeup, which surprised me how good it was. But yes, the results do not line up with his stuff, and that's again. There's always a caveat with a Royals prospect right now. That's the caveat with him. It feels like the results should be better than what they've been, but there has been enough progress, and he's still young enough that he warrants being taken seriously as a prospect in this farm system. This is all damning with faint praise. Like there's no actual praise here.
Trust me, neither one of these lists are like take a handful of darts and throw them towards a board.
Basically, that's what it is.
Yeah, because like when I look at him, I see a guy who 61 Ks in 72 innings his first year. His good stop in low A, where he had a 3.50 ERA and a 1.40 WHIP. He had 66 Ks and 64 and a third. Then only 34 Ks at high A. I mean, he doesn't get swing and misses, and that number is going to keep going down and down and down and down. The higher he goes up level wise. So listen, I'd like it to be the case, but this smells more like the Royals were the only ones that thought about taking him that high and giving him that much money because he was a local guy. And they always had this fear of Albert Pujols happening under their nose. And so it's a diet version of Bubba Starling, right, on the pitching side. But I will tell you that Ben Caderna did not even make my list.
Okay.
So no Ben Caderna. Who do you got at 6?
So I'm gonna briefly combine two guys here because they don't qualify for your list, and nothing says damning like with faint praise or says that the farm system is terrible than having two relievers in your top 8. But I actually have James MacArthur at 6, and we've talked about him at length. But his performance in September was so dominant that the way I rank these guys is basically if I could only keep one of these guys in the organization, who would I rather have? That's what that determines who ranks higher. And aside from the guys we've mentioned, I think I'd rather have James MacArthur right now than almost anybody I'm going to mention later, because I think he's right now a major league quality reliever, a setup guy at the very least. And a good pickup. But when a guy that you literally had been designated for assignment is now a top 10 prospect in your system, that does say something about your farm system too. And then just 2 spots below him at 8 was John McMillan, who you may recall, flew through the farm system this year. This is a different kind of reliever than MacArthur. He throws 100.
He's my guy.
Yeah, it has command issues, but was more dominant than MacArthur when he got to the major leagues. 4 innings, he faced 13 batters, gave up 1 hit, and struck out 8. The reason he ranks 8th and ranks below MacArthur is I'm not sure he's healthy. His season ended with a sprained elbow, and I haven't heard a whisper in the 2 months since he went on the injured list. So, I wouldn't be surprised at any moment if we hear the report that he's having Tommy John surgery. That's the specter that haunts him until he gets back out on a mound spring training and shows that he's healthy. But if he's healthy, I probably would rather have him than MacArthur. I bring those up just to point out how weak the farm system is. But I'm going to take them off my list going forward now, so that you and I have a comparable, set of criteria for determining who's eligible here. Well, so in that case, my number 6 is Javier Vaz.
So, all right. So now I don't even know now you're going to have to send me your list, because I don't even know where to put guys now that you're changing it midstream.
Well, what I'm doing, I'm removing the 2 relievers off the list because you didn't consider them, correct?
No.
Okay. So I'm saying, let's just remove them. I wanted them to bring them up, say, these guys, this is where they would fit in a prospect ranking where they were eligible. But if you deemed them ineligible, then let's match our lists up going forward.
Javier Vaz is 6. Where does that put Gavin Cross and Mason Barnett?
Gavin Cross would be 7, and Mason Barnett would be 8 then.
Okay, I can make that.
So they're a little closer.
Okay. All right. Javier Vaz is on my list at number 8.
Okay. So for those of you
bragging about it, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, for those who are not familiar, Vaz, he was a 15th round pick out of Vanderbilt last year, right? College hitter, a punch and Judy type. He's listed at 5'9", 151 pounds. A guy
which is a reason why I actually like him more, because he's not your traditional. Like, the Royals just love to get those profile type guys, and they took a guy who's not.
Right.
And he's hitting, which,
there's a track record of guys with his body type succeeding in the major leagues if they also have his contact profile. And that's the reason why you have to take this guy seriously as a potential major leaguer. In A-ball, it's not simply that he had a 367 on base percentage, which is very good, but he had 49 walks and 32 strikeouts in 388 plate appearances. And then went to Double-A. His strikeout to walk ratio deteriorated a little. He had 18 strikeouts and 15 walks. So more strikeouts than walks, barely. But his OPS actually went up. So he slugged 429 in Double-A after slugging 390 in A-ball. I think he had a swinging strike rate, right? When you look at more advanced statistics, of 3.3% this year. So when he swung the bat, he missed the pitch 1 out of every 30 swings, which I believe was the best or second best swinging strike percentage of any player in the minor leagues this year. So the point, a guy with this profile has to be an elite contact guy in order to succeed in the majors. He might be that elite contact guy. Yeah. And, I mentioned Stephen Kwan earlier this year as like the absolute best case scenario for what kind of player he could be. I've seen him compared to Miles Straw, who, has been in the major leagues for several years as a kind of, fourth outfielder / pinch runner / occasional batter who can get on base but doesn't have any power. I think that the range of outcomes is somewhere in there where he almost certainly will have a major league career. He most likely will end up as a bench player, but could be a very good bench player. But there is, if that he can maintain that contact rate to the major leagues, there is a chance that he could be a bottom of the lineup every day center fielder in the major leagues, or even left fielder like Stephen Kwan. And again, in this farm system, top 10 prospect for sure.
Okay. All right. So now I'm up with 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Charles.
Okay.
6. Just again, looking for upside here out of this mix. And that's what you get. And that's really kind of all you get, because he does not make contact with the baseball a whole lot. And that is a problem, but there is some pop here. They gave extra money to get him signed. They like what he brings. They like the athletic tools. He's big, which means that, he ought to be able to just muscle the ball over the wall. In all likelihood, he'll never make enough contact to ever make it to the big leagues. But if he does, if somebody can break it down and figure out how to get the bat on the ball, this is a guy that's got a lot more ceiling than most of the guys you're talking about. He's kind of the anti-Vaz. Vaz figures to make enough contact to have a spot somewhere in the big leagues, but never really make a difference. This guy figures to never get to the big leagues, but if he can figure it out, he's got a chance to make a difference. So I go Austin Charles at 6.
Okay. In my modified list now, he would be 12th. So if you take out all the major leaguers. So I essentially for all the things you just said. I mean, I was probably higher on him in July than I am now. Like he after getting off to a hot start at full season ball, he tapered off at the end. But I think he's still 19 years old. He could be anything, but anything means he could be a major leaguer, which is better than 98% of the prospects, in this farm system probably. All right, so yeah, I said Gavin Cross and then Mason Barnett. So we're to number 9 on my list. I mean, it depends on whether or not you count McLaughlin.
No, you did number 7 on mine. It's still mine.
Oh, so you go ahead. All right.
So number 7, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
This is where we're at. 17-year-old outfielder Tony Ruiz.
Okay. All right.
He was signed for like $1.2 million. I think was the price, if I'm not mistaken, in this year's international, and has pop. Julio Rodriguez's name was mentioned as an upside. The Royals have not been good when they've splashed around 7 figures in Latin America for a long time. I'm hoping that they're doing this a different way. They're taking a different approach to it. They need to be. I'll take a flyer that the $1.2 million and the Red Sox were interested in him. That's who they beat out for him. So it's really more on the case that the Red Sox had interest in him. And again, he's miles away from the big leagues. And that means that there's still plenty of upside because he hasn't failed yet. So Tony Ruiz at 7.
Again, I think where this farm system is if you're going to throw darts, throwing a dart at a high upside guy, completely reasonable. I don't have Ruiz on my list. I do have another guy, from that class of Latin American prospect that the Royals have signed in the last draft class. I think my hope and hope you share is that the Royals have, since JJ took over the top role, have sort of reshuffled the way they scout in Latin America and using Rene Francisco in the role, in a better role that he's more designed. This is the guy who, that was the farm director, the international scouting director that Dayton Moore brought in when he was hired back in 2006 and immediately landed Salvador Perez and Kelvin Herrera and Yordano Ventura. And then for the last, 5 to 10 years, the Royals international development has just soured. And I suspect that, I don't think that Rene Francisco forgot how to scout. I think that maybe sometimes as a result of your own success, you end up being promoted, and you got promotions and titles, and that might have actually taken them away from the field or away from being out on the front
actually
line.
good at it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think we've talked about the Peter principle on this podcast before. That's why people come listen to our podcast, not for Royals talk. For talking about business ideas like the Peter principle, right? Where you get promoted if you're competent at your job, and you keep getting promoted until you get to a spot where you're not actually particularly competent. And that's the danger, is you don't want a guy who's really good at scouting to get quote unquote promoted to a spot where it's more prestigious, but actually doesn't let him do what he's best at. And I think Rene Francisco being out there more, scouting more, I'm hoping has paid off some dividends with this most recent draft class, because there are some good signs in Latin America. But at the very low level, the 17-year-olds you're talking about, 17 and 18. So it's going to be 3 or 4 years before we know if these guys are going to be any good or not. But Tony Ruiz is a very good dart throw. I'll have my own dart throw here in a few minutes.
Okay, so you had Gavin Cross 7, Mason Barnett 8, so we're ready for your number 9.
So number 9 is Carter Jensen.
Okay.
And Carter Jensen was on the list last year, I think, as well, kind of around the same spot. And was promoted this year from low A ball to high A ball. Did not take a step forward offensively, but actually really had a very, very similar year. I mean, last year he hit 227 but had 83 walks, and so had a 363 on base percentage. This year he hit 211, but had 92 walks in almost the exact same number of plate appearances, and had a 356 on base. So a very un-Royals-esque. Probably we talk about George Contreras. This is the guy who looks like George Contreras, but will be more upside. Like last year, he hit much better in the second half. He's very young for his levels. I mean, he played
19 years old. Yeah.
This year he turned 20 midseason. He turned, his birthday's July 3rd, and if you look at his numbers from July 1st on, he had he had 246, a 365 on base, but also slugged 425. He had a much higher slugging average in the second half. And he's a catcher. I mean, this is the important thing to remember. I don't know if he'll be able to catch the major league level, but if he can, and if he can catch at a major league level in 2 or 3 years, given his youth and his on base ability, that alone is going to make him a really good backup catcher. But there is definitely starting upside here. The power is coming. He's 20 years old. The upside. His ultimate upside is as high as all but, I don't think his upside is really much different than like Blake Mitchell's upside. Like Blake Mitchell probably is, his 99th percentile projection is better, but not by that much. I think Carter Jensen, there is a world in which he's an all-star catcher in the future. It's unlikely he'll get there, but at his, anybody who can say that right now is got to be on this list for me.
He is on my list. He is at number 12.
Okay.
For all the reasons you stated, although I don't hold as much. I think if you can't make frequency of contact at this level, that's going to erode away some of the walks. He's clearly a take and rake type of guy. I think he does profile more as a backup catcher. If he can catch, because I remember that was a question you had last year when we talked about him.
And I think
there are questions about whether or not he can actually catch.
Right. I think Keith Law had some good things to say about his defense early, before when we talked with Keith a few months ago. I don't know where he stands now, but that was when I started taking the possibility he could catch the major league level seriously. And as I've said many times with other catching prospects, MJ Melendez being the classic example, with catchers, the ability to play the position is everything, because there is no fallback option. If he is a first baseman in the end, even if his bat develops, he's going to be a marginal guy. I don't see his bat developing to the point where he could be an everyday first baseman.
You didn't mention the 120 strikeouts.
I mean, it's not that high, to be perfectly honest.
Not if this was a big league. He were in the big leagues, but he's not. Now he is, like you said, young, but the Royals have lots of guys who strike out a lot, and it doesn't usually get better.
Right. Well, I mean, but as I'm saying, his strikeout rate was less. He had a lower strikeout rate than Gavin Cross did, playing on the same team. And Gavin Cross is a year and a half older than him. And as we both noted,
there's no reason to be identifying being better than anyone else on the Royals list.
Fair enough.
As a badge of honor.
Right, but somebody has to be on this list. So, like again,
That's true.
His strikeout rate,
on at 12.
yeah. So his strikeout rate, it is a concern, but it's not. This isn't, Nick Prado territory here. His strikeout rate's not to the point where I just think it will inhibit his ability to develop. I will say I don't. He's fast. He fascinates me just because his offensive profile is so unlike anything the Royals typically develop. I don't know how their philosophy of hitter development. This is a guy that Nick Prado is kind of the cautionary tale, in that you worry that if a guy becomes so passive at the plate that he starts taking called strike threes all the time, like Nick Prado does. That's the danger here. Like, Carter Jensen is the very rare Royals prospect who might actually be served better by swinging more. That's something I'll never say about most guys, but that's something you would think the Royals might be uniquely well suited to teach a guy to swing more, because that's really what they've been teaching their hitting prospects for the last 40 years. I just don't know.
All right. So I had Ruiz at 7, Javier Vaz at 8. So that brings me to number 9. And I'm going to go Rany Cabrera.
Ooh, okay.
Rany
Cabrera. You really are just going all in with the you said guys who have not shown
bed
any
have
evidence
not
of failure.
bed have not been shat in yet. That's
even if the reason for that is they have literally not gone to bed yet. Like,
they have not bedded yet. Yes, even if that's the case. Listen, here's one of the write-ups. A 17-year-old outfielder who's on a second tour through the Dominican Summer League. He's hitting 320, 469, 620 with 1 home run and 5 steals in 15 games. 11% strikeout rate. He's miles and miles and miles away from the big leagues, but there's some numbers there to like, and this is exactly the type of upside guy we've talked about. He came with Cole Reagans in the deal for Aroldis Chapman. If people don't know the name, why would you? He is the lottery ticket that the Royals got back, but there's some skills there, and I'll throw a dart that Rany Cabrera ends up being a thing.
I considered him. I felt, I have another guy on the list. Like I said, it's not him. After the trade, he was still good when he joined the Royals, but his numbers weren't nearly as good as they were when he was in the Rangers organization. With the Rangers before the trade, he had 13 walks and 7 strikeouts. With the Royals, he had 7 walks and 19 strikeouts. So again, the strikeout to walk ratio kind of deteriorated. But he's, he just turned 18 in July. Like, yes, he could be absolutely anything. He's exactly the kind of guy the Royals should be targeting in trades. And the nice thing is, at this point, he's basically, it's all gravy with him because the Royals got Cole Reagans. So anything Rany Cabrera can add to that trade will be a good thing. But it's not necessary for him to be a star or anything. But yes, there is a chance that this guy could be an everyday player in the major leagues. So I can argue.
Then do you want my number 10? Has not been mentioned yet. Carson Rocafort.
Oh, okay. So one of this year's draft pick.
Yeah, high contact, no power whatsoever. Andrew Benintendi is the name that they were throwing around as far as what he could be. He's got a little bit of speed, but he's got the on-base part down. So, I throw a dart and hope that he ends up being a little bit of David DeJesus on down the road would be the hope. In all likelihood, he will grab a cup of coffee as an injury replacement and never hit for enough power to where, he'll be Nicky Lopez of the outfield is what will probably happen.
Well, Nicky Lopez without the ability to play shortstop. That sounds like a top prospect to me. Only in the Royals system. So I'm up to number 10, I think.
So I take it you did not have Rany Cabrera or Carson Rocafort. We know
I did not.
Not Carson Rocafort either.
No, but I had similar players, so I think it's a good time to.
And that ends my list, by the way, because I've already said Caden Wallace at 11, Carter Jensen at 12.
Okay, perfect.
We need 10 and 11 on yours.
So 10 is another Latin American player. I don't think we've ever mentioned on this podcast before. No, I'm not going to be that ambitious to bring up the 17-year-old pitcher. That's too much risk for my blood. No, I'm bringing up the name of Ramon Ramirez. who is a catcher. And that's a lot of catchers on my list. My God.
He's already been noted in the gallery.
Yeah.
Is it a good thing that there's this many catchers?
I don't know. It's a high risk, high reward thing. That's what I would say. But Ramon Ramirez is really interesting. He's only 18 years old. He's Venezuelan. His numbers this year, you mentioned Cabrera and Tony Ruiz. Ramon Ramirez in 41 games in the Dominican Summer League. Let's keep in mind where we're talking about. 5 levels away from the majors. Hit 344 with a 440 on base and a 615 slug. More walks than strikeouts. He had 8 home runs, which may not sound like a lot, but in the Dominican Summer League, the parks are big. The kids are still developing. Guys don't hit that many home runs. He was 4th in the Dominican Summer League in home runs. There are 50 teams in the Dominican Summer League. Most franchises, the Royals included, have 2 teams in the league. So there are 50 teams. I mean, there's 900 hitters in that league. He was 4th with 8 home runs. So the pop is real. He's in instructional league. They brought him to the stateside, which is a good sign. And I've seen some good scouting reports on him, both his catching ability and his power in Arizona. He will probably be, in Arizona complex next year. If he starts in A ball, that would be a hugely optimistic, positive development for him. But he'll start the year. He'll still be 18 years old, so could be anything. But you threw your darts at Tony Ruiz and Rany Cabrera, and that's perfectly fine. I'm throwing a dart at Ramon Ramirez as somebody who could be a major league catcher in the future.
And we know Austin Charles is 12 on your list. So
right. So number 11. So number 11 is so you took Carson Rocafort from this draft. I took Jared Dickey, who was the 11th round pick, but keep in mind that the 11th round pick, he was the big money guy that they got over slot with their first pick of day 2, or I guess it was day 3. Yeah, day 3. And Dickey, like Rocafort, the power wasn't there. Neither one of them hit a home run in their pro debuts. But Dickey had a very sweet swing in college. I'm trying to find
Tennessee. In
Tennessee, yeah, and played at a high caliber college program. Must have closed the tab with his numbers. He had better numbers than Rocafort. He had I want to say like a 430 on base percentage, and more walks than strikeouts in his professional debut. Yeah, here we go. 434 on base in A ball. And again, that's impressive to go, straight from the draft to A ball. He played like 4 games in rookie ball just to get his feet wet. Went to A ball, 434 on base, 347 batting average, 12 walks and 11 strikeouts. He's not quite the defender that Rocafort could be. Rocafort could play center field, whereas Dickey's more of a corner guy. So you mentioned Benintendi. It's funny because I feel like Benintendi's a good comp for Dickey as well. Star potential, probably not. League average outfielder with high on base, low power or medium range power. That's a possibility. So
all right. So once filtering out all the guys that you kept Nick Lofton in there at number 2, right?
Yeah. I feel like I can't just ignore the fact Nick Lofton's probably going to be on the roster opening day next year. So
Rany's top 12 prospects: Blake Mitchell, Nick Lofton, Frank Mazzucato, Caden Wallace, Ben Caderna, Javier Vaz, Gavin Cross, Mason Barnett, Carter Jensen, Ramon Ramirez, Jared Dickey, and Austin Charles. And for me, it's Mason Barnett, Blake Walters, Frank Mazzucato, Blake Mitchell, Gavin Cross, Austin Charles, Tony Ruiz, Javier Vaz, Rany Cabrera, Carson Rocafort, Caden Wallace, and Carter Jensen. The top 12s. And we now will go to bed and cry, because that is not a good list.
No, and that's not a good list. And that is why, the most important development for the Royals last couple of months, maybe the hiring of Brian Bridges as their new scouting director, because whatever they were doing before has not been working.
Yes.
And
By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keeping your parking lot as safe as possible, allowing you to focus on your business. Find Gann Asphalt and Concrete online at GannAsphalt.com. There was a change in the front office. Jin Wong, no longer a member of the Kansas City Royals. This titled as a mutual parting. Is that how it was described?
I believe this was a mutual decision, is how what we've been told.
Is it ever a mutual decision?
It's like a mutual option. The Royals have the mutual options in their contracts, which are never mutual. They're neither mutual nor an option because they never get exercised. Mutual decision definitely seems like a loaded term because it's very rare that two people agree at the exact same time that it's time to part ways. This was a surprise to me, as it probably was to you, in part because you and I have on a superficial level, look, you and I have talked about the Royals need to make some changes in the front office, not just adding, but also subtracting. They just subtracted a guy. So you would think, hey, this is exactly what we want. But Jin Wong was not the guy I was thinking that the Royals needed to part ways with. He's been with the organization. He predates he's been in there longer than Dayton Moore was and J.J. Picola was. He came over from the Braves, ironically enough, the same organization, in 1999. I mean, 24 years in one organization. That's a hell of an accomplishment on any level. To the fact that he's the only real holdover that Dayton Moore came in and didn't get rid of, right? That they kept him in the first place and has been there all along. And the other thing is that his area of expertise, I mean, he was in charge of, contracts and the important thing is he was not in charge of the scouting and player development that has led to the farm system being where it is now. So
he's more of a contract and service time guy.
Right. The nuts and bolts, the technical aspect of which is important to know the rules. Looking back, I can't think of a situation where the Royals, biffed on a contract. They biffed on giving a contract to Hunter Dozier, but that wasn't Jin Wong making that decision. That was made at the Dayton Moore level. But in terms of from what you and I can tell from the outside, I don't know that Jin Wong did anything that was that displayed incompetence. Let's put it that way. But 24 years, maybe it was just time. I mean, I don't want to read too much into this. But it's just kind of a surprise that of all the people that left, it was him.
A couple things jumped to my mind immediately when I saw it. Is he going to the White Sox or Rangers? Right, where there are connections. Chris gets running the show in Chicago. Obviously, Chris Young and Dayton Moore down in Texas. That he had time on his contract, and so he couldn't jump immediately. But now he's got his eyes, or he's being offered something greater somewhere else. It's to me, that was the first thing that jumped to my mind is where is he going next?
Right. And I've not heard that. I mean, if I had heard he was going to another organization, then I would say he got a better opportunity and maybe it's a promotion or whatever, but I've not heard that. So that's why it does. The fact that we've not heard that he's going to another organization does make me wonder that this might not have been his decision, in which case, this was this the Royals deciding that Jin Wong was not part of the solution? Maybe that's the case, but it just seems strange to have all the people to point fingers at that Jin Wong is the one, if that's the case.
Yeah. No, so where do you think? Do you think Jin Wong decided to leave, which would mean he should land with either the White Sox, Rangers?
Right. Well, if we see that happen, then but like I said, I think we would have known that almost immediately. The fact that we have not heard of a landing spot for him yet makes me wonder that this was not something he didn't have the next step necessarily plotted out.
Yeah, I haven't talked to enough people, really anybody, on what went into this, but I am kind of intrigued by it. Like, I don't know that it's a bad thing. I like Jin Wong, the guy. I think he's a smart baseball guy, and I think he'll land another gig, somewhere. But I am perplexed because he seems like, the kind of guy that you need. And
He's like a glue guy is kind of the way I look at him.
Yeah, but I don't see how anything's his fault. So I'm wondering how this came about.
Yeah, again, it's a danger in us speculating. There could be so many different reasons that this occurred.
I'm hoping it's because his contract expired and he's moving on to greener pastures.
Right.
That's what I hope.
Right. If that's the case, and if that's the case, more power to him, and I wish him the best. And like you said, it at least makes you feel better that he's got a better opportunity. I mean, at some point you want a promotion too. You've been somewhere 24 years, and he's hasn't his role hasn't changed appreciably. He may be just looking for new opportunities. But until we know exactly why, to me, my concern is not so much even that he's leaving. It's more that he's leaving and no one else is. Like, that's just, that dichotomy there is what is a little bit perplexing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty, GAN Asphalt and Concrete keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Will save the Arizona Diamondbacks for another day because I know Randy's jet lagged and our soul has been drained from us as we went through a ranking of the Royals prospects. Back at it, though, next Sunday with another edition of the Kaufman Corner. Remember, we are live usually Sundays at 10 for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us